We're here today with Jerad B. Jerad, thank you for doing this, first of all.
No problem.
And so we'll start it off like we typically start every podcast out. Man, I've known Jerad for almost 20 years now. 16, somewhere around there. Man, Jerad is probably the most pivotal person in my story. When I decided to get clean the first time and I walked into a room, Jerad was there. Jerad decided to help me. He sponsored me then. I decided to go back out for another year, or 9 years, 8 years. Time's like a ball of yarn to me. It's all kind of stuck together. And he remained in my life through that period of time. You know, he would come into the flower shop. I always believed that he came into the flower shop because he was checking on me. He tells me he came in because his wife likes flowers, right? So I think it may be somewhere in the middle. You know, and when I was at my lowest point, I reached out to Jerad, and he was still there. This man mentors me today, and I try to follow his lead. I try to do the things that he does, you know, he's still clean. So, again, thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
Not so anonymous with the... No, I can't do that.
Like and subscribe.
Not so anonymous with EJ Areca.
My first clean date was December 26 of 96. It was my first clean date. But I wasn't able to stay clean. I went to treatment and got out of there and got loaded again, and I've had a few clean dates.
Yeah.
So this last clean date was like, what happened was I ended up putting both feet into the fellowship,
Right.
into recovery, and that's why I stay today. I decided no longer to stay on the fence.
So all in.
All in.
All in, baby. And so, you know, like I always like to stretch it back and kind of qualify us, right? Because people look at us in recovery and sometimes, you know, we're cleaned up, we're healthier, we're living a better life, right? And so, like, what did life look like? We'll go all the way back to, like, for, like, a young Jerad, like the formative years. You know, what did it look like? What did the family life look like? You know, what was it like growing up for you?
Growing up, it was difficult. My dad was in the service. We lived in Charleston, South Carolina, in a small town outside of Charleston called Goose Creek, South Carolina. And my mom was a waitress, and she worked at nights. And my dad was in the service and was out to sea. He was a submariner. And so I had a lot of babysitters. I had a lot of... growing up. September 16th of 81, my dad committed suicide. And so life changed.
Right.
My mom was dating another man at that time. And I understand why. She was looking for love, and the relationship wasn't there. My dad was gone out to sea all the time, and it just wasn't there. So I get what happened.
Yeah. And so I have to guess that left you pretty confused as a young child. Like, where do I belong? What does this look like for me? Why is my family different from other people? Right. So like moving forward, does that like change your dynamic as far as like being around other kids? Like, I'm not like them. Mine's different. Why is mine like this?
So during that time, like, there was a lot of abandonment stuff going on, you know what I mean? Like, why did he leave? You know, at 7, you don't really know, you know what I mean? I was 7 years old. My sister was 3. The dynamic, you know, my stepfather, you know, I've known him, 41 years? And we have a good life. We had a good life, you know. It had structure. Yeah. So I never thought about like my life looks different. I just didn't always fit in.
Yeah.
and always in search of, trying to be part of, trying to fit in, and never really did.
Right. So then, so like moving forward for you, because, with this disease we suffer from of addiction, so these things like trying to be part of and trying to fit in, is that what led, to maybe poor decision making or using?
My disease took off long before I ever started using a substance, a drug. I mean, I overate, I do lie, cheat, manipulate, act out on behaviors that led to finding that first one.
Right.
That first one, I found home, right? I found the group of people that I could fit in with. That was kind of the road.
Right.
Where I always try to fit in during like my junior high school years and high school years. Like I tried fitting in with different groups of people, trying to find my niche. I started a DJ business with some partners, trying to get in the music industry. It was pretty successful. One of my old business partners, is still in the business, just to try to fit in somewhere. So
like in that whole process, you say like trying to fit in, even though you were doing these things with people, did you always feel like indifferent or like, like, cause I have like a common experience. Like even when I was young, I was exposed to a lot of older people and I seen like the things that they did and the sense of humor they had. And I always felt like I just never quite, even though I would try to be part of, I never really felt like I fit in.
Exactly. And so I was, I graduated like high school with honors. I had all the, AP computer classes and chemistry and trigonometry and English and all the honor stuff. And I graduated, and I tried to fit in with that group of people. And I didn't feel like I fit in. Right. And so I'd find other groups of people and it never, I never fit in. Right. I tried going to college and didn't fit in, I found my parents were willing to pay for college, and I decided hanging out on the street corner and drinking was way more important than going to college.
And then so there it is, right? So then the using starts because it makes you feel part of, right? And so where does that lead you, right? Because now you feel like you have this group of people that you fit in with, and so from that point forward, is it just like whatever it takes to be part of? I mean, where does that lead you?
It led me. I used to come home drunk so often that my mom said, "You know what? Here's the deal. How about you go live with your grandparents in Minnesota?" And I grew up in. Let me backtrack. Yeah. So my dad was in the service in Goose Creek, South Carolina, right? My stepfather was working for a company out of California here. When my dad committed suicide, we ended up about a year later moving to California, to San Jose, California, and so I grew up in San Jose, California most of my life. I went to high school at Yerba Buena High School, and so when I started drinking so often, my mom was like, "Hey, like here's the deal. How about you go try to live with your grandparents in Minnesota?" And the problem was I had been drinking so much already that I went with me.
Yeah.
Wherever I go with me. Like the disease goes with me. I didn't leave it behind. It went with me into Minnesota, and I lived with my grandparents' house on a family farm, and I worked for my uncle who was a general contractor, and I found those groups of people again that like to throw, cases of beers in trunks of cars and go for road trips. And I tried going back to school, and I went to community college in a small town and studied criminal law. criminal justice, and I ended up getting arrested on 4 felonies because I like to get loaded.
Yeah.
And it whatever that took, right? So it was just trying to fit in, not knowing, not thinking about the consequences, just doing whatever, and whether it's selling drugs, breaking in burglaries, whether it was writing hot checks, whether it was whatever it was to fit in with that group of people.
Yeah. And so I'd imagine, studying criminal justice as your major and then getting caught with 4 felonies is going to derail anything positive that you had going on at that time, right?
Oh, anything positive, yes. Definitely went out the window. I mean, my criminal law class was taught by the prosecuting attorney for that county. And so the best thing, they were like, it's a small town.
Yeah.
And the best thing they said, is like, hey, Jerad, the best thing you can do is probably go back to California.
Right.
And I said, okay, let's go.
And so I got to imagine it wasn't a very warm welcome coming back to California, right? I mean.
Right. Well, I came back to California to my mom's place thinking that something had changed, right?
Yeah.
And nothing had changed because I hadn't changed. And I showed up and I got a job and I started doing it. I found that group of people again. Different substance, though, this time, and I found another group of people and I tried that substance and I fell in love. And, I didn't get loaded very long.
Yeah.
Like from 18 to 22. And then a few relapses after that, and then I got clean.
So, but even like going through all this stuff, right, when you're being asked to leave your mom's house and go to Minnesota, and then you're being asked by the prosecutor in Minnesota to get the hell out of town, like in your mind, were you thinking, man, I got an issue here? Was it like that?
Didn't even cross my mind.
Right?
Didn't even cross my mind. I ended up catching another case in Santa Clara County, and that night that night had changed something because the person I was with ended up getting shot, but it wasn't until like a little, sitting in jail that I realized, and finally coming down was like, well, something's not right here.
Yeah.
Here I am one more time incarcerated. Here I am one more time. The guy I was with got shot. He is alive, but still shot. And so something had changed at that moment, but I still didn't know how to fix it yet.
Right. And so like when you're going through this phase and you're starting a little bit, things are starting to click, like, hey, maybe something's going on here. Were there anybody reaching out to you or any suggestions like, hey, there might be another way to live here? Or were you just kind of trying to find your own way at this point? Like, have you been...
I was still on my own way.
Yeah.
It wasn't until about a week before Christmas I showed up at my parents' house, strung out. I wanted help, but I wanted like my mom to help me. And she was like, no, there's the phone book and there's the phone. If you want help, you can call. And I was like, I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And I showed up on Christmas Day and thinking I was owed something, those Christmas presents, and show up for the family. And what I really wanted to do was take the presents and and take them back to the Connections house and trade them for a bag. And what ended up happening was my mom was like, hey, the presents can stay and you can go. And like if you know how to still get loaded with lint in your pocket kind of guy, you know what I mean? And on Christmas Day of 96, I ended up at the Connections house. And I was getting loaded. And when I got back to my apartment at that time, I realized this isn't working anymore, And I went back to, I ended up in treatment the day after Christmas.
Day after. And so that was your first clean date.
First clean date.
And so your first introduction to treatment or recovery, I mean, what does that look like for you? Are you like, okay, I know things are unmanageable. I really want to give this a shot, or was it like I'm here to appease some people, maybe,
You know, I was there to a full range of things. I was there to, for people, for myself for a little bit. I was absconding probation. And I didn't. It was a place to just like settle down.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere I didn't have to get loaded for like 30 days.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Spin
Yeah,
dry.
I could have left at any time. I mean, there was no locked gates, or I wasn't handcuffed or anything, but I could just settle down.
Right.
And when I got out of there, I ended up in a treatment facility, or not, sober living environment, they call them,
Yeah.
SLEs. I moved to Santa Cruz, and I lived in a SLE, and like 3 blocks away from the boardwalk. And that's where I met a guy that got me into the trade I'm in today. But I didn't know how to fit in with like the meetings. I was going to meetings in Santa Cruz at that time. I mean, meetings were like 100+ people, and I'd sit in the back and I'd just get lost in the shuffle, just doing the deal for the house I was living in, going to work, and I just didn't know how to fit in quite yet.
Yeah.
Still on the fence.
Yeah, I mean, I can identify. I remember, I was used to going to meetings here in our small town, and when I went to treatment, it was a bigger deal, bigger town, bigger, and even though I had been exposed to it, I'd sit in the back of the room, and I'd be afraid to speak up. I wouldn't dare ask anybody for help, especially at meeting level. Like, man, I don't get it, right? Like, can you guys help me? So how long does that, how long are you able to hold on to the, with things going the way they were, not really being willing to jump all the way in to this new way of life? How long were you able to hold on to that clean date?
So I was able to hold on for 4 months. And what had happened was I got this union job, right?
Yeah.
And so I stayed there long enough for 3 months, and the benefits kicked in. And what had happened was because I didn't know how to fit in the meetings, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up starting to pack a bag on Thursday nights. I'd get paid on Thursdays. On Fridays, I'd be back in the San Jose, back at the Connections house or old friends' houses, and getting loaded on Friday night, Saturday night, and then I'd go back to Santa Cruz on Sunday to this house meeting because I had a place to stay during the week, right? Yeah. And then eventually they, if you're like me, it just got loaded a little too much. And I came back home that one day, and they're like, "You're loaded." I'm like, "Yeah. This is getting old." And they put me on contract, and I lasted 20 days, and they kicked me out. And the only thing I had going for me at that time was union benefits kicked in, so I went back to treatment.
So that's the second stint in treatment.
Yep.
And how does the attitude shift for you from the first stay there to the second stay?
The second stay, I had all my stuff in my little car, a 1976 Toyota Celica, all my stuff in it, and I was parked in the bottom of the parking lot, and I stayed, and I'm like, well, maybe this time I'll get it. And it lasted for a while. I moved to another SLE in Santa Cruz area, and I stayed clean for 6 months. And what had happened was, whether it be 4 months, 6 months, 10 months, 6 months again, I always ended up back in this garage with the same people, same drugs, same neighborhood, and it hadn't changed.
Right.
And that's where the light bulb finally went on. I was out the back door one day, and during the day, I wasn't even partying at night anymore. I was like getting loaded all day, every day, throughout the night. Didn't really matter anymore. And the light bulb finally went on. Same garage, same homeboys, same dope. Nothing's changed.
Yeah. Well, except for your disease is progressing at this point, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you often share this, and you've shared it with me, like, try going out there, with a head full of recovery and a body full of dope, right? And so I got to imagine, since you share that with a lot of people, that's what you were going through.
Oh, it's a terrible
time.
place to be.
Yeah.
It is a chaotic place to be in your head.
And do you think that was the progression of your disease, to try and quiet that shame and guilt and just dole it all out?
Dole everything out.
Yeah.
Just life in general, whether it's the disease, whether it's the recovery, whether, just tune it all out. I don't want to, listen to any of it. And finally, that day, it clicked, and, recovery was way louder than the disease.
Right.
And I ended up back in I went to a men's meeting on a Friday night, and I finally raised my hand and said, "My name's Jerad, and I need some help."
Right.
And
so how was that meeting different from all the other meetings where you had just sat in the back and not participated? When you did that simple thing that seems so difficult, how did that place of recovery change for you? Like, how did the rooms change for you? How did the people respond to you?
Well, because I had been in and out so many times, I knew a few of those people already.
Yeah.
And I had watched them, and they were still there. And some of them are still there today, 24 years later.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, a few of them. I don't know what clicked that day. I finally I got one of those sponsors that finally, was kind of harsh.
Yeah.
Like, hey, and that's what I needed at that time. You got a book? Yeah. Well, read it. Everything on the first page of that book is blank. So that's all you know about recovery. And my first step with him was like, I'm powerless over my homeboys. I already knew I was powerless over drugs.
Yeah.
I was powerless over the people I was hanging out with.
Right.
Because my life became unmanageable when I got around them. And he was like, hey, if you like hanging out with old homeboys, then you need to go find another sponsor. I'm like, I'm not quite ready for that. And that's the decision. When I made the decision to put both feet in to recovery. Because I knew what it was like getting loaded. And I didn't want any more of that.
Yeah.
I wanted something different. And that's, for so many of us, fear. Fear of the unknown and fear of change is a common denominator for so many that are just coming into recovery. They don't want, I always refer to, we're pigs that like our own shit, and because it's comfortable.
Right.
We don't want something new.
And so now you've made the decision to jump into recovery, right? You've had enough of this cycle of insanity of trying the same thing, getting the same results. So, like, what does like the early part of recovery look like for Jerad? Once you pretty much surrender and you found that sponsor that's giving it to you straight, what does that early part of recovery look like? Were you just like all in on fire for recovery, or were you kind of being drug around by the collar, or like what does that look like?
I had both going on because I was all in on recovery in step work stuff.
Yeah.
Because I could do that on my own, and I didn't have to be a social butterfly.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to be a social butterfly. I was but I ran into some people that made me, pulled me by the collar, like you were just saying. Like, get in the car, we're going. And we'd go to another meeting, or we'll go dancing, or whatever it was, and man, they're both passed away now. Big John and Paul D. Yeah. Get in the car, we're going. And at that time I was a big guy, and Big John was like 6'6", 300 and something pounds, and I was 6 foot and 2 something.
Yeah.
I'm listening. So
yeah. And so then I got to imagine for you, like, things started to change at that point, right? You're in, you found some people that want to be around, because when you got clean, it sounded like, or when you were attempting to get clean, they had enough of your shit, right? The only ones that wanted you around were the old homeboys in the garage. So what does it feel like at this point to start to be accepted by these people and start living life without, substance in your body? I mean, it's a foreign feeling.
It took me a long time because I ended up moving into a house up on in Aptos, up on 72 acres, and I became a recluse. Like, I didn't know. I had a sponsor at that time that I'd drive through Santa Cruz, and I'd go to his house, and I'd have dinner, and I'd work my way back up the hill to my house, and I'd stay there. But like, I didn't go grocery shopping until I ran out of groceries. I'd eat everything until I finally, man, I gotta go grocery shopping. Like, anxiety had just got me. Like, I've abandoned more shopping carts in grocery stores because they moved things around and I couldn't find them. Right. Drive me crazy. So over years, I had to work on that. I'm finally able to go to the grocery store with my wife and push the shopping cart, and be okay with it.
Yeah. And that's a real thing, right? Like, certain people deal with a level of anxiety that it's hard to describe to other people that don't deal with it. So for somebody that deals with it, and if there's somebody that struggles with that, like what would you tell somebody that deals with that particular issue?
Identify the feeling and write about it and walk through it and know that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Because that was early on, right? But even in our small town, when I'm asked to go grocery shopping or for events that we have for our meetings, I still sometimes get it because I feel like I'm being judged like this. I'm not, 6'1", whatever, and 300, 200 and something pounds. I'm buying all these hamburgers and hot dogs, and I'm thinking everyone's judging me because look at this fat, and it's not the case, right?
Yeah.
But that's what my head is telling me, and that's where my anxiety takes me, and it's not the case. I'm purchasing food for a barbecue.
Right.
And I'm not going home to eat 200 hamburgers, but my head tells me that's not what's going on.
And so it still plagues you today, and it's something that. And so do you feel like as time goes on, it gets easier to deal with, or you're just used to it, or?
Yeah, as time has gone on, I've gotten better at it.
Yeah.
I've called my wife coming out of Costco. Hey, I made it out without having a problem.
Yeah.
Even though they move Costco around all the time, just to keep you looking, to buy more stuff. I didn't lose my shit.
Right.
I made it through.
Well, perception is crazy, right? Because like I've always seen you as this guy that has it all together, right? You got it all figured out, but we're all a work in progress, right? And so, we touched on the early recovery, right? And so you're getting drug around, and you're going to dances and everything, and then. So from that point forward, does it start to reaffirm the fact that like this is the life for me, right? Like I'm enjoying being clean. Like where's that shift happen from the point of being in fear, hey, I need help. Now people are providing that help. When does this start becoming like this is the right decision for me? Like how long did that take for you?
I can't place it in what year it was, but I knew things were changing when I had 6 months clean. I was told I was going to be of service. I didn't volunteer. My sponsor told me, he asked me if I was busy, like on the second Wednesday or Tuesday of the month, and I said no. He goes, now you are. And I went down and took a position at H&I Hospitals and Institutions. And I started taking meetings into boys' group homes. And then I ended up taking a meeting into medium security in Santa Cruz County. And then I ended up taking it. And then I had been often so much that then, oh, hey, how about you write a letter to the warden for Soledad? We're going to take a meeting down in Soledad, and you're going to go with us. And so that was the shift I started, whether it's in the years 2 and 3 or 3 and 4, a shift had changed, right? Now I'm doing step work. I'm doing service. I'm doing... I think that's somewhere in there where it started changing.
Right.
And I started work, and a lot of the change had happened after I'd probably done my first 4-step. First real 4-step, not just start and stop. I finally put it down all on paper and read it to my sponsor. And my sponsor's notorious for doing step work, and I've been in more restaurants in the Santa Cruz County area and did step work than I can count on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, and how is that like for somebody dealing with anxiety? Reading your 4-step at a diner, right?
Oh God, it is definitely nerve-wracking. Like the joke that we have is that everything is recorded anyways,
right,
and uploaded to the internet. www.smack.com is the joke that me and my sponsor have been having for years.
Yeah.
So, and what it really is identifying is that my deepest, darkest secrets will get me loaded again.
Yeah.
And the people I'm sitting around really don't care. Right. They really don't care what him and I are talking about, right? They're on their own little subjects. And so what if they do care?
Yeah.
That's their, they took part in a conversation that wasn't theirs.
Yeah, and so now, now you're clean and you're working a program and you're in service and things are shifting. So, and all this is happening in Santa Cruz, California, right? Where the recovery, I've been to a few meetings and I've been around there. And I mean, there is so much recovery in that area. And then you go from that area to a smaller community, right? And I got to imagine that had to be a crazy shift, right?
Oh, yeah. So I met my wife in recovery.
Yeah.
We started dating, and then I proposed to her, and what we ended up doing was we ended up buying a house here in Los Baños, California, and then we ended up getting married. And I never lived with her before, prior to buying that house. We had, I never lived with a female before that in a relationship.
So from isolating on the mountain
to
jumping full.
I did have a roommate up on the mountain, and she was... She's passed away now, but what had happened was she was a prostitute from Oakland, and she was used to doing things, right? And what she had told me at one time was that I had taught her how to have intimacy without having sex, and that's how a relationship for her was able to work. And what that taught me was I was able to live with other people. And living with my wife, we kind of just worked through it. And it was rough at first, My anxiety, I wouldn't be able to go grocery shopping. I had sleep apnea. I worked all the time. All I wanted to do is stay home, take naps, and she would want to go out and do things, and I was not into it, And then moving here, the meetings were so many. There was 3 meetings a week in a little Greyhound station, in a little side room, and there's a few people still clean from those meetings. But man, what a difference. Going from 100+ people in a meeting to 3-4 people in a meeting, and culture shock.
Oh, I'm sure.
This isn't like, what's going on here, But ended up staying clean.
Yeah. And so like, and I want to bounce to something else because you talk about like a lot of these old timers, right? And I had the privilege in my time being around and meeting some of these people you're talking about from the past, right? And now you're almost considered an old timer. I know there's a lot of people that have a lot more years. But as you see this happening, and I know we stay clean for ourselves, But as you see some of these people going and passing on, do you feel a greater responsibility to stick around to pass these lessons down? I mean, is it something you think about?
No, I don't. I haven't really thought about that part, but what I have thought about was that the next 10 seconds ain't guaranteed.
Yeah.
So I stay in recovery because I don't want to get loaded.
Yeah.
And I want to see what it may look like later, my life, Some of these old timers have been around forever, and I've seen the lives they had led, and holy smokes, if I could have just what they have, and some of them have gotten loaded and died, and I know I don't want that, whether it's surgeries or going to the dentist or whatever, and end up getting prescribed something again, and that takes them right on out, or a lot of people in recovery suffer from mental illness and end up committing suicide, and that's a huge thing that happens, and because after getting loaded and self-medicating for years, undiagnosed or whatever, and I've seen that happen through a lot of friends of mine that have committed suicide over the years.
Yeah. Well, and that's what, and for me, I think about it, because you've been around, in multiple points in my life that are like pivotal, right? And when I was at the worst point, right, when I was at my bottom of bottoms, right, I reached out and called, right, and thank God you didn't change that phone number, because I showed up right here on this front step, right, and I showed up and you took me, and your sponsor was in town, I think from out of state at that point, and you guys had a nice evening planned, right, and you stuck my ass in the car and listened to me snivel all the way up to Outwater and all the way back. What keeps that compassion alive, right, to help a guy like me, right? And there's no promise, I wouldn't have bet my wet socks on me staying clean at that time, and I didn't. I got clean after that, right? But what keeps that alive in you, like the willingness to take some guy, right, throw him in your car, right, and give him another shot?
Because someone did it for me.
Right.
Someone gave me another shot. Someone kept me, didn't turn their back on me. Like, you know what? You're a repeat. We don't have time for you. And the deal is that the deal for me is whether you get loaded or not, I still get to stay clean. Right. Whether you call me or not, whether you do the work or not, I still get to stay clean. I've done my part, and that's how I am able to continue. I'm willing to help somebody else. If you want to do the work, fine. I'll take you through the steps. I'll show up. I'll answer the phone. Yeah, it's been the same phone number since 1997. It hasn't changed.
Yeah.
So I just continue to show up because someone did it for me, and that's how I'm able to stay clean. By giving it back to somebody else.
Right.
This thing is like paid forward, I can only keep what I have by giving it away.
Yeah, and that's something that, it seemed like such a foreign concept at the time when we're in the car and we're on our way back and I'm in the middle of my sniveling and I'm like, thank you. And you're like, no, thank you. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what the fuck do you mean, right? Like, what am I doing for you, right? Today I understand because I've been able to, the gift that you gave me, I've been able to give to somebody else. Mm-hmm. And I just experienced that someone else give that gift to another individual, mm-hmm. right? And so, it's a ripple effect.
Exactly.
And it's something, so amazing. It's hard to describe to somebody that doesn't understand.
Until you have that feeling.
Yeah.
Until you can see it in motion, and watch it and feel what's going on, you can't explain that.
Yeah.
It's a feeling. I couldn't tell you. Yeah. You show up on my door, you're crying, don't know what to do. Well, then, you know what we're doing, EJ? Get in the car.
Yeah.
We're going, no, I don't want to go to a meeting. No, get in the car, And fortunately, another seed was planted,
Yes.
right? Whether you were sitting outside the restaurant, punching things, crying, or whatever, you got to stay clean.
Yeah.
Maybe not that night, but it eventually happened one more time, And that's part of the whole deal about the head full of recovery and a body full of dope doesn't really work.
Yeah. And some of us are slower than others. It took about 9 years for those seeds to start blooming, but they did, right? And they did. And so like going back to you, I asked a question that was completely threw everything off track. So then you moved to Los Banos, small fellowship, and you guys, with what you experienced over there, were able to bring a lot of structure to this fellowship. So did you guys supplement your recovery by going other places, or did you guys just bear down in Los Banos? And
no, we ended up going back to Santa Cruz on a regular basis, kind of trying to fit in, get some meetings and get some meetings here. Watching it grow, that was a huge thing, because when we didn't have a treasury ship, when the treasury ship was up, they handed me a Ziploc bag full of coins and said, "Here you go." And I'm like, I just came from Santa Cruz, where there's like a checkbook and books and receipts and all kinds of stuff. And what we were able to do is watch the fellowship grow here and get a decent place to have meetings in, and that's a huge thing.
yeah,
I think we've been in the same meeting place now for 12 plus years, and have a good relationship with the facility. Who would ever think a bunch of people in recovery would have a good relationship with a facility?
yeah. Well, and so okay, so we talked a lot about, what it was like for you before early recovery. So what's life like for you now, right? Is this what you expected your life to look like?
No. Matter of fact, next month, me and my wife would have been together for 20 years. I had never thought I'd be with anybody. I thought I was going to be like my great uncle, who, I think in his 70s finally got a dancing partner. He was single most of his life, and I thought I was going to end up like him.
Yeah.
Better yet, I'm glad I made it past the age of 29, because that's when my dad passed away, committed suicide. And I worked on all that stuff.
Yeah.
At 9 years clean, I wanted to commit suicide. I sought outside help. I went to counseling, and I, seen all that and got all that. And I never thought I'd own a house. I never thought I'd be a productive member of society. I thought I'd be incarcerated, playing pinochle or dominoes for soups or envelopes or whatever, push-ups or whatever, whatever the deal is. I didn't think I'd be where I am today. You're sitting in my house.
Yeah. It's a beautiful house.
And we've worked hard on it. It's a work in progress still, but it's what we continue to do.
Yeah. And so now, you have, what most would consider a successful life, right? You have the toys you want. You have an amazing relationship with your wife, right? You go on vacations. You do things that everybody wants to do. What keeps you inspired to stay in recovery, right? To make that the most important thing in your life.
What makes it most important right now is I know what it's like not to have that stuff,
Yeah.
You know, I know what it's like to count 2,200 pennies to get a $20 bag and $2 worth of gas. You know, I don't have to do that today, and I don't want to go back to that.
Right.
I already know what that's like, so why would I give that up now? You know what I mean? When it was all based on going to meetings, working steps, being part of a fellowship, service work. You know what I mean? That's why I continue.
Yeah. And that's, you know, and so like what would you tell that, you know, that guy that's powerless over his homeboys and he can't stop getting loaded today, right? Because that's pretty unique. Like I hear you say that, but I don't hear many people say that, right? And we often talk about people, places, and things cause us to repeat the same cycles. Mm-hmm. So what would you tell somebody that's stuck in that sort of situation, you know?
You might want to change your playground.
Yeah.
You might want to change the people you're hanging out with and give it what it really comes down to, are you willing to change your lifestyle for something different that may give you something a whole lot better?
Right.
It's all about change, right? Because we hang out with those homeboys, we hang out with those places, we hang out that, you know, whatever we got going on. And we know it ain't right because we come to that place, or at least I have. And it's the fear of the change. It's the fear of the unknown. And that's the biggest thing people I run to in recovery all the time is the fear of change, the fear of the unknown. Why would I want to change what I got going on? Because it's so comfortable.
Yeah.
But when we change, though, and we, you know, and what we didn't touch on was like a higher power.
Yeah.
And we start putting this faith into a higher power and that something is going to be different. And it turned out to be, you know. I tried something different, and it was a whole lot better than what it was before.
So touching on the higher power thing, was that something that you struggle with, you know, getting into recovery? Was that?
No, I you know, growing up Catholic, I baptized, communion, all that, you know, confirmation. I actually helped teach confirmation. But I kind of drew away from it.
Yeah.
And getting loaded kind of took me away from all that. You know, I believe in a higher power today, and if you look around my house, there's like Buddha. There is like the Taj Mahal is somewhere around here. The Bible is around here somewhere. There's a cross hanging up somewhere. I take it all in.
Right.
You know, it all gonna work for me. You know, take pieces of it all and make it my own. You know, and that's how I develop my higher power. And I'm the guy that's driving to work praying. You know, I don't get on my knees. I'm behind the wheel driving, and it works for me.
And it works for you. And that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Right.
It works for me.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people get stuck in that, and they can't get past that phase, right? In order to get clean, like it's like I just can't do it, right?
Well, here's the deal. I mean, call me up anytime, and we'll go down to the ocean, and we'll go down and hop in the ocean, and tell me you can stop a wave. There is a power greater than you,
right?
You know what I mean? Or we'll go, you know, out in the forest and chop a tree. Try stopping a tree from falling on you. There's a power greater than you. It's going to fall.
Yeah.
You know, you just got to learn how to believe in something that's not you. And that's where the hang up is. Or they are have a resentment towards a higher power that they grew up with and don't know how to get away from that. And that's an issue too.
Yeah. And so, you know, somebody that might be listening to this podcast and they can identify with some of the things you said, but they're just not sure they have a problem. You know, they might be pretty sure they have a problem. Like, what would you tell a person like that if life's becoming unmanageable and they think they want to try something different? Like, what would you tell somebody that's stuck, for lack of a better word?
try not getting loaded first.
Right.
See how that works. And if you can't not get loaded for a few days, you know what I mean, you might have a problem. Right. I mean, there's people that I know that, can use recreationally and show up for work and be a productive member of society. I get it, that's not me. Look at the stuff that's going around you. If you're causing a whole lot of pain in a whole lot of other people's lives because of your behavior, you might have a problem. And you might want to try not getting loaded and see how that works out. And see if there is a change that takes place. I think.
Yeah, I can relate. I can relate. And it's like for me, just sitting across from you, like we have a great relationship, right? But we don't have this like, a lot of like sponsee, like, I love you, man. I love you, right?
Right.
And so for me to be able to sit across from you and tell you what you mean to me and what you've done in my life, right? Because there's things that a sponsor helps a sponsee with, right? Which is just predicated like with step work, right?
Right.
But what you've done in my life is so above and beyond that, right? The help that you gave my significant other, right? When I was away, right? And it wasn't necessarily like, oh, EJ's a great guy, give him a chance, shit like that. It was like trying to keep her from spinning out in her own head, like, and just help keep my family stable, right? Through these things, and I appreciate you, right? And I don't know if I've ever sat and told you just how much you've done or the impact that you've made on my family's life. I wouldn't have a family today if it wasn't for you, right?
I realized that I had done something. So we're celebrating your birthday not too long ago, right, at dinner.
Yeah.
And I break out my wallet to pay for my dinner. And your mom tells me, no, I'm paying for your dinner. I go, why? Well, you've done a whole lot for my family, right? So I know I've made a change in your life, and done something, not just for you, but your entire family.
Yeah.
And I know that that's where by just showing up and being and taking part in, in recovery, it can help other people, right? By showing up and answering my phone or answering my door or going to meetings or taking the people to meetings that maybe I don't want to.
Yeah.
There's times I know I don't want to go to a meeting. Yeah. My couch sounds a whole lot better sometimes. But I'll show up, hey, there's a newcomer at the meeting, or hey, I need a ride, or okay, here we go. I gotta go. Because that's what someone did for me.
Yeah.
Showed up. What I hadn't touched on was like you asked this question earlier, what does my life look like now? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I got stuff going on in my life that like my kidneys are deteriorating. I'm 48 years old, right? A whole lot of stuff has just come up in my life that whoa. I want to be able to hang out with my grandkids. I want to hang out, be part of my wife's life. And what I have to do is another lifestyle change. I quit using, but now I have to do another lifestyle change as far as diet, as far as, because I want to be here a little longer. And that's what happens when you get into recovery. Like things change over time, I gone from like being 300 plus pounds to where I am today through exercise, and now I'm on another journey of another lifestyle change. And recovery has taught me how to do that.
Yeah, and that's something that I use as an example to people, right? Like your journey is more than just recovery from using drugs, right? Like the first time that I came around, you were a lot bigger, right? and you showed that you can apply what you've learned in recovery to every aspect of your life, because you became pretty darn fit, almost like a power lifter, and so like, what is that transformation, how does that affect your life, like?
What I learned was that, getting loaded was only a symptom.
Yeah.
I had a problem with life and how to deal with it. And as I progressed through this journey is learning how to take on new experiences, right? Whether it's, it started with like quit smoking, I haven't had a cigarette since 2007, and then what was it? 2014, I started doing CrossFit. And I started doing, powerlifting and all that's involved in CrossFit. And now here I am on another lifestyle change when I realized that, my kidneys are deteriorating. And I can't stop that.
Yeah.
I've already, I've been on some medication that I tried and it didn't work. So now I got to try something else. And I'm always trying to explore different ways of healing, right? Different healing methods, whether it's Eastern medicine or Western medicine, whatever is going to prolong my quality of life. How about that?
Yeah, and we talk so much about just living just for today, right?
Yep.
And with all this going on in your life, how do you stay in the moment, right? And not future trip and worry and live in fear.
Back to this higher power.
Yeah.
Like me and my higher power, I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I commute 120 miles one way to work. There's a whole lot of windshield time, and me and my higher power can get down, other than somebody cutting me off. And I put this faith in my higher power that I'm going to be taken care of, whatever that looks like, right? God, my God, my higher power I call God. God's will, not mine. And I try to stay in this place of acceptance. And try to take on his guidance, right? And that's where I have to stay. And yeah, I could very easily get into future tripping and feeling less than, not good enough. All those things have come across my mind, and I've been able to process all that, and just know that God has a plan. God has a plan.
Just lucky to be a part of it. And so before we close this thing down, is there anything else that you want to put out there? Is there anything that you've learned in this journey that we haven't touched on that you feel is important to put out there for people?
If you're just getting clean, don't sell yourself short. Whatever that list of like, I just want to have my family back, or I just wanted this, or, shoot for the stars, because in recovery, you can be anybody you want to be. You can do it all. You can, I never thought I'd be like where I am today I'm irresponsible, right? I'm a foreman on a job site. Who would ever thought that I'm responsible for not only the job, but for these employees? So you could do anything you want in the rooms of recovery. Just don't sell yourself short.
Perfect.
Don't sell yourself short.
Perfect. I think we'll leave it right there. Jerad, thank you so much for doing this.
You're
man.
welcome.
And we got to end it with a hug.
Oh, wonderful.
That's how we end it all.
Oh, good.
Try not to step on all of Jesse's equipment here.